Jay here, Stretford Paddock. This is the Paddock Podcast. Joining me as always is Mr. Ronaldo Brown. How are we doing?
I'm doing all right, a little bit better than I would expect to be like after a 1-0 defeat to an Arsenal team that I hate more than most. But
you do hate Arsenal. I'm proud of you on that front.
But people will be surprised to hear that I found some positives in it.
We're going to get into all that. Also joining us is a friend of the channel. Been on quite a few times now. It's the Athletics football writer, Mark Critchley. How are we doing?
How are we doing, boys? We all right?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I think, positive after yesterday. It's weird. Like, I couldn't watch the game. I had to write something at the same time, but I was like, I'm coming on Stretford Paddock tomorrow, so I'm going to have to watch it later. So I got the re-watching. But before that, I was seeing all the comments about it, like, I'm really optimistic, it's great and stuff. And I was, I don't know, like, do you know that Denzel Washington meme where, I think it's from the Malcolm X film, and he's like, that brother's starving.
Yeah.
That just came to mind because I thought people have been desperate to see a United performance that's had something in it for a long time.
Yeah.
But then I watched it back and it was good. Like, it was positive, right? There's a lot of optimism to go out. So.
Yeah, I was entertained for chunks of the game, and I was annoyed because I thought at one point I took my lad, and I think it was on around the 65th minute maybe. I said to him, "We'll get an equaliser here. It's coming." And then Arsenal just took the sting out of the game a little bit. I thought your mate Manuel Ugarte didn't help matters. I thought he didn't quite. He wasn't great. And then we had 10 minutes where the game just sort of quietened down, and I think that helped them. And then we went again, and it was United were on the attack again, but it didn't quite happen. So we'll get into all that. Make sure you're getting involved in the chat and the comments. As you can see from the thumbnail as well, we're going to talk about Jadon Sancho, plus a bit of a ticket shambles and other subjects as well. But I want to start with you, Mark, and I want to start, before we get to Arsenal, I want to talk to you about Rasmus Hojlund, because you've been writing about Rasmus Hojlund. He obviously wasn't involved yesterday at all. It was a bit of a surprise. I think it was the Fiorentina game, was it, where he didn't get any minutes. And I think we read out a tweet at the time on a watch-along from Laurie, your colleague at The Athletic, saying that it doesn't bode well for him. It looks like this is sort of a message from Ruben Amorim, look, you're not part of my plans. Obviously not featuring against Arsenal. I'd seen that he's actually got a decent record against. I think he scored against them in pre-season, and he made his debut against them, and probably maybe should have had a penalty. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's prolific against them, but you thought he would have featured at least in some capacity. He didn't. What's the latest on Rasmus Hojlund? Where does his future lie?
I think, from his perspective, the question is, does yesterday change anything?
Okay.
Really? We've known for a long time, and he's been absolutely adamant, and he came on record, and you lads were in America, weren't you? Where he said, I want to stay, I want to fight for my place. If you speak to absolutely anybody around him, that has been the consistent message. And I know there's been reports about, well, he might be open to an AC Milan move, etc., etc. The one message that's always come back to me is that he wants to fight for this. He's ready to be dedicated, to commit himself, and to try and earn his place back, because he thinks he can, even though Šeško's in the building now. Yesterday, does that move the needle? Does that mean that over the next 2 weeks he's going to have to sit down and talk to some of the people that are around him and really make a decision about his career? Because I think it's been made clear to him now, and we reported this on The Athletic as well with Laurie, that getting minutes this season is going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for anybody at United who's on the fringes, because there's no Europe. Amorim doesn't need to rotate. Playing time is going to be at a premium if you're not first choice pick. So he's got a decision to make. It's tough, because I think if he's a United fan, he came to the club, he had options on the table. People forget this now. He was rated as the best young striker in Italy. He had Paris Saint-Germain in for him as well at the same time, and could have gone there. He decided to go for United. He's a United fan. He wants to make it work at his boyhood club. It's really difficult to see how it works for him. And if he does decide to stay, I don't know what United can really do more to push him out the door. If he decides to stay, you're potentially looking at least 6 months, maybe a season of very little football to no football at an age where he's still developing as a young player. He's clearly got a lot of work to do. Look, I don't think even he and his entourage or whatever would look at last season and say that was a level befitting a United striker. But he still has confidence in his own abilities, as far as I know, to try and salvage his career at United. So I think he's got a big decision to make, because it's become a lot clearer over the last 24, 48 hours just how difficult his situation is.
Yeah, Ronnie, where do you stand on all this? Because I'll be honest with you, just I'll be quick before I get to you. I when push comes to shove, I probably don't think Hojlund's at the level that we need. But I do sympathise with any Manchester United player who wants to stay and fight for the place. I'm a big fan of that. I've got no qualms with someone saying, I don't want to move on. I think I'm good enough, or I want to try and improve, or I want to be part of this team. I get that. And I think far too often in the past at Manchester United, we've had players that just couldn't wait to get out the door. So I've not got an issue with that. I just don't really think he's at the level that we hoped he would be. What's your thoughts?
It was interesting. Obviously, Mark did mention the PSG interest that he had before he came to United. But wasn't it a case of PSG's valuation of him was much less than we ended up paying for as well? Was that a factor? I'm pretty sure PSG came in with an inquiry of was it like 45 million plus €5. Right. And I think that's what they valued him as probably, which would have been in line for what he probably, because he was obviously forgetting he was 90. He had potential. Yeah, it's not like he was a bum. Do you know what I mean? At all.
Exactly. Yeah.
But obviously United paid over the odds, and I think that's ultimately hurt Hojlund as well whilst he's been here. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, you do say players aren't in control of what they're paid for, but unfortunately, the way that football is, that does hang over your head when you have a career. And I think with Hojlund, it's not like, in terms of his United career, I feel like it is probably near an end. Can he go somewhere else and almost rejuvenate his career a little bit and show at least a little bit of the potential and ability that people have believed that he does have? Possibly that could happen, but sometimes it can just be the wrong situation, wrong environment and wrong club, and you might not just, your quality or performance level might just currently not fit with where the club is at the moment and what the club needs. Because I think United does need, which is why some people are a little bit iffy about Sesko initially, but we still will see whether he'll come good. But I think that's why there was so much clamouring from the fan base when we was in for a striker. Is that someone that was definitely nailed on, because I feel like United almost need when we signing people, which is why United have gone out and bought Premier League proven players like Cunha and Bumo, because the risk is so much lower, because you've already seen them perform in the league that you're playing in. But as for where I stand on it, I don't have anything against Hojlund saying that he wants to stay and fight for his place.
No.
But ultimately, the way I see it is, once a player has to then say those words of, I want to stay and fight for my place, it's usually on the back of not performing at the level required.
True.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But so one thing that you could say is that around the conversations of all the other players that we've been saying are in the bomb squad or whatever this summer, and are they going to sell them, are they not? The question has always been, there's been question marks about professionalism, about dedication, about whether they want to be at the club. This case, if you're Hojlund and you're looking at that, you can look at this and say, well, actually that dedication, that desire to be here, it actually isn't just enough. You can't have that alone, can you? Because the club will still try and push you out the door, even if you've not got that. So it's a little bit ironic. But at the same time, look, United are not beholden to having any player who, just because he's a fan, and they have to keep him.
No.
So it's not really, that's not really up for debate. I don't know. Would you send him out on loan? Do you think? Send him out on loan, build his confidence up, bring him back.
Maybe the issue I have is where he goes on loan. If he goes on loan to Italy and he does, let's say he goes to Italy and he scores 12 league goals.
Yeah.
He does all right. And he comes back. Has that shown us anything?
Yeah, but has Sesko cracked it because he scored a few goals in the Bundesliga?
I know. But we'll see Sesko in the Premier League, won't we, this season? True. And that'll be my assessment of Sesko, what he does We've seen 2 seasons of Rasmus Hojlund in the Premier League. So he'd come back from Italy, and then we'd probably have to see another season of him again in the Premier League. That's my only concern. Unless he went to Italy and absolutely smashed it, where you were like, okay, that's my only concern, is it might help his confidence, he might come back a better player, he might come back and he's just that year from being 22 to 23 can be massive for some players. He might sort of kick on a bit. But I don't know if it really answers the questions. I think one thing it will do as well is that year of him out on loan, if he is alone, you're going to have another year of Chido Obi going from obviously 17 to...
But he wasn't on the bench yesterday, was he?
Yeah, see what happens with his development. So that might help in some respects. I just worry that we might be sort of just not answering many questions with a loan move. I don't know is the answer. I would prefer it, but I don't know if it happened if he went on loan to someone in the Premier League, but that's not really looking likely, is it?
I think to have two similar... Obviously, Amram did say they are similar, but there are definitely differences to their game. But in terms of career arcs, you don't really want do United have enough games this season, especially without Europe, to have a Hojlund, Sesko and Xerxes within the same team? Probably not, and keep people happy. It's something's got to give.
Yeah.
And it does look like Hojlund's obviously time here is over and have moved on to the Sesko project. I know Sesko's obviously viewed as a similar risk signing in terms of there's a little bit of an unknown to him, and they're banking on the potential that he does have from being young. But what is different from Sesko is Sesko has come to United with over 100 career goals already.
Well, he's 2 years older than at the time he came, I guess. But yeah.
Whereas Hojlund didn't. So there's a little bit more of that. But obviously, Sesko's only played, 25 minutes. So we're going to have to see whether he's a success, which we're all hoping, or whether he ends up falling down a similar route.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting when Amorim said yesterday that there's the similarities between Sesko and Hojlund, and that means that we have to pick one or the other. And I get that from a perspective, because Xerxes is a very different player from either of them, right? But it made me think, do you actually, if you were going to have a first choice and a backup, do you want two similar players? So you've almost got like a plan A and a plan A1, or do you want the plan A and the plan B? Because if Sesko gets injured this season, say, God forbid, knock on wood, all that, then Xerxes comes in and it's a very different set. It might be a better setup, we don't know yet, we're not seeing it either. Cheeto, yeah. To be fair, there's Cheeto as well, but that did just make me think, what's the right answer there? I don't know. Different managers probably have different approaches to that when they're in the squad.
I do feel a bit for Hojlund. I do. It's either way you look at it, it's not great, is it? The season started and he's basically been told we don't want you, even though he wants to try and fight for his place. And I think there's an element of what you're mentioning there, Ronnie, of Sesko's got all those career goals. You saw it with Mount yesterday. Mount's in his third season at United now. And Mount, for me, had his best game in a red shirt yesterday. I know he scored 2 goals against Athletic Club, whatever, but I thought he was, especially in that first half, I thought he was...
Switch hit passes over and over.
That's the Mason Mount I've been dying to see since he's arrived at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
And I think the difference with Mount is maybe you can look at injuries as being a big part of why he's not worked out, and also he has a level of pedigree when he arrived. He's played in the Premier League, he's won a Champions League, he's played consistently well for Chelsea, and people can go, well, we know what a good Mason Mount can do in the Premier League. Whereas Rasmus Hojlund's had these fits and starts where he's had a little purple patch and then it's... So I think there's still a lot more question marks about, is he good enough?
Sure.
Whereas Mason Mount is kind of like, can he stay fit enough is the more obvious
That's
question.
The biggest question.
So I get why it's sort of a little bit different there, even though they're both... they've both been at the club a similar amount of time. I'll get some of the comments and I'll come back to you both on a different topic. Neil Crow says, get Heaton in goal for Fulham and sign a goalkeeper and CM. Ryan Belmont, who's been a member of the academy for 24 months, says, optimistic even after the loss. Looking forward to this game this Sunday. Also, Xerxes linked to Napoli. Surely they both don't go, Xerxes and Rasmus, UTFP. John Kine says, Jay, did you get into OTOK? My dad and I took 30 minutes queuing outside the Stretford end from 4 o'clock, just got in for kick-off. Maybe we need to all get in an hour before and build the atmosphere like the 80s. I'll get to the ticket thing in a minute. Andy Tate, I think, got stuck in that. Bit of a shambles with some of the Android phones, I think it was, where they'd sent an email out saying you had to change your settings. But I'll sympathise with anyone who gets an email off Manchester United. You ignore it, because I think we all do that. It's like, I ignore it. Like, you get an email and it's usually like, download our new, whatever, or special offer at the club store. So unless you're expecting something, like you wait to find out if you've got a ticket or whatever, 9 times out of 10 you are going to ignore an email from the club. So I do sympathise with anyone who did ignore that email or was sort of stitched up a little bit and got into the ground late, because it's not ideal, obviously. Seaman says, my worry is that United will play like that only against the big teams. The mid-table clubs are the banana skin. Next week is telling. Right, we've spoken about Rasmus Hojlund, who I think we can all admit, whether we think he's good enough or not, we sympathise with him. We see, he wants to stay at the club. The manager's obviously made it clear that he's sort of not part of his immediate plans. Let's talk about Jadon Sancho, because that doesn't feel like a similar situation in any way, shape or form. Now, Jadon Sancho, basically all summer, has been linked with a move away. At first, if I can get me sort of me dates right, I think he was linked with a move to Chelsea. Obviously, he was at Chelsea last season. They were open to keeping him, depending on who you read. The contract's offer was anything from around 90k a week to maybe a little bit more, which was for him was a bit of a substantial drop in the wages on Old Trafford. So he said thanks but no thanks. Didn't stay at Stamford Bridge. Then he was linked, I think there was talk of him maybe going to Juventus, I think at one point.
There were some links around that.
There was some links.
I'm not sure if it ever was really accelerated, but...
Yeah, there was rumours, shall we say, for the sake of argument. Then I believe it was Besiktas, maybe.
They were flying around Fenerbahce for a time.
Sorry, I don't want to get those clubs mixed up because I'll get battered. There was talk of a move to Turkey. That didn't get anywhere. The latest, I think, was that Roma were in for him. They had a proposal. I think Fabrizio Romano has said that he's turned that move down. He doesn't fancy a move to Roma, but United were ready to take a bit of a loss on him and take 20 million quid. But Sancho, for whatever reason, doesn't fancy a move to Roma. Michael Stout, then I'll come to you, Ronnie. What have you made of the Jadon Sancho situation this summer? Just this summer, we can get into the wider picture in a minute with you, Ronnie.
This summer, it doesn't surprise me that he's still here, to be honest. I think that it's a really difficult deal to try and move him on, not because United want so much money for him that people aren't willing to pay. There's clearly been interest since the start. I think it's down to the contract that they gave him when he joined the club in 2021, and his level of production since then probably hasn't matched the level of compensation that he gets within that contract. And so you're asking clubs to take a bit of a chance on a player who hasn't delivered over the last few years. And now those situations, they're going to need to... it's almost the flip reverse of the Hojlund one before, where I'm talking about how he, in Hojlund's shoes, he's looking at it as though, I want to make it at this club. If that's going to mean 6 months where I'm not playing that much, that's something I've got to consider. Jadon Sancho, does he want to go and play football? Does he want to play at the highest level still? I don't know the answer to that question. I would be speculating if I tried to answer it. But it's a question of his own desire to be able to leave United, put a close to this chapter of this book, and then try and get his career back on track. I didn't think he played that badly for Chelsea last season, right? I don't think he blew anyone's socks off and earned a contract there, but it wasn't as though he wasn't a Premier League winger. I don't know if he's ever really shown it at Premier League level, but you can see why there's still top clubs interested in him. I think it's a question of his desire now and just how much he actually wants to get away and start playing football again, because that's going to be the key thing. You've got to remember, he's got a year left on his contract. United have the option, but that is not going to be that. I can't really see that being triggered, right? Because they're desperate to get rid and kind of relieve this burden, this albatross that they've got.
That would surely be insane.
It won't happen.
If Manchester United triggered the extension of Jadon Sancho's contract.
Yeah, we've talked about protecting value before for Phil Jones. I don't think this is...
If that happened, that in all the shocking decisions I've seen at Manchester United Football Club, that would be the most shocking.
I wouldn't expect that. But even, look, we did the story in Athletic last week about the 20 million bid from Roma. And obviously today there's noises about that he's turned that down. I think from the outset of that, there was a lot of scepticism as to whether he would actually go through with that, and there was never any indication right from the start that he was willing to do so. So you're almost stuck at square one, really. And I wonder if there's a resolution even later in the window, just because as deadlines approach, people get drastic, people start doing things that they wouldn't do earlier. But I think it's tough.
Yeah, Ronnie, what have you made of the whole Jadon Sancho at Manchester United situation? Because when he was at Dortmund and we were linked with him, I was excited. We had the saga, didn't we, of getting him. It was looked like it was going to happen in the 2020 summer, I think it was. Didn't. Then obviously the following summer, eventually we got there. Big money, but it felt, even though it was 70-odd million quid to me, and you might disagree, it felt like it was worth it. A young attacker who's 36 goal involvements in 39 games, whatever it was, in his final season at Dortmund. But it never quite got going. It never felt like he'd fully sort of settled at United or got going at United, and wasn't helped, to be fair to the lad, by changes in managers and all the rest of it. But I can't really think of a time when I felt Jadon Sancho was truly a Manchester United player. And obviously now we're at a situation where he's probably one of the most, I'll be honest, disliked players we've had at the club by the fans, and the way they've all turned against him. And he seems to be in this sort of almost this self-imposed limbo, it feels, where he's not got a club and I don't know where he's going to go.
Yeah, no, it's been a nightmare signing, in all honesty.
Yeah,
because obviously for the money that we've brought him in for, for the return that we've got in performances, but also the salary that he's been on as well has been a little bit of a detriment, and it's made him really difficult to offload. And also when you are a player that spent 2-3 years, if you're looking at it from a player's perspective, on a certain amount of money, knowing that you're not going to get that at your next club because of how you played and performed, it makes you a little bit more hesitant to leave. So that's how you get this kind of tug of war and limbo that you've got going on, where it does feel like United are being held ransom a little bit. And I'm hearing obviously that the reason why he's reluctant to stay is because he wants a full payout for the rest of his contract, which will be the rest of the year before he does leave, and that is something that can be sometimes.
That'll ingratiate him to the fans. That'll turn him back on board.
Now that's more common than you think. That is commonly requested by some players, but usually if you've given a little bit more to the club, there might be a little bit of leniency. Or sometimes it can be negotiated where you get like, we'll give you 50% of what you're owed or something, maybe something along them lines. But I think it's a little bit difficult when Jadon Sancho is on what he's on, knowing that at his next club, over what he's shown in terms of the footballing world, he's probably going to get half of that at best. Do you know what I mean? So, but anyway, enough about the financial stuff. You talk about expectations and performance, it's just not being good enough. And I think some people, there's a little bit of revisionism. Obviously, hindsight is always 20/20, because when he was performing at Dortmund, I think he was basically going bar for bar with Lionel Messi when it came to his J numbers. I think only Messi had more than him.
Yeah, those numbers were, you know me, I'm a simple man who follows numbers. I don't watch Dortmund every week, unlike a lot of people. And I was looking at the numbers going, get him in the United side.
But I think there was a couple question marks about his fit in terms of how dynamic and quick he actually is, in terms of how he'd fit in Premier League football, because obviously Dortmund at the time and the team that he was in, obviously Bundesliga at the time, was very, very open, and I think like 90% of his assists over that period weren't crosses. So then I think people are thinking that's why you didn't come in and you see this winger that was taking people on and whipping people in, which are usually the ones that do pretty well in this league, or him running behind and belting past people. It was always like he's on transition slightly in field and he's sliding through Haaland in behind. That type of vibe. Do you know what I mean? But even still, his performance level still was better. I don't know if it was a case of he's come to United, got comfortable, got back in England, and then he's obviously took his eye off the ball, because there were a couple of attitude issues that were flagged up during his time at Dortmund as well. And that is why, when it comes to player evaluation and transfers, and I think United need to do this, and I think clubs are starting to do this more, player personality and fit has become like a bit of a massive factor that clubs are factoring in, because the last thing you want is, it's like when you get a reference for a new job. I'm pretty sure clubs do ask for references. I think I've been told, because you got mates that play, they say they do ask for references, background checks, but sometimes I think, is there an element, Mark, where clubs just don't care if they feel like they can provide enough on the pitch? They'll be a bit more lenient about what they.
I'm sure that is done, and when they go through signings or they talk about the way that they go through their recruitment, they'll highlight those processes, because it sounds good that you're making those checks. But let's face it, if you've got a guy who's got, I don't know, like 30 goals in 35 appearances in the Bundesliga one season, for example, and you hear that he's a total tit off the pitch, you're still probably going to do that deal, right? Because if it's cheap enough and if it works, and because you get desperate, because there's so many variables that go into transfers. I would say, I don't know, like maybe the lesson of the Sancho thing is not to spend 70 odd million euros on players from the Bundesliga, but they did that 2 weeks ago. So
the thing, I mean, I can see where you're going with that one.
No, I'm kidding. Sesko's good, all right.
The thing that sort of amazed me with Sancho, and you mentioned it, Aaron, like all these stories that came out once he'd been at United for a little while, that there was issues at Dortmund and they roomed him with Haaland because Haaland was professional, it rubbed off on him. There was then when I saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on the overlap, I think he was on, and he said that when Sancho arrived, he wanted to play on the left.
That was the mad thing for me.
That was where
how do you not
Ole
know?
preferred Rashford, who was doing really well on the left-hand side for United at the time, and you think you've bought a player and you don't even know where he wants to play or prefers to play. Then there was issues. I think he had some sort of illness or whatever.
Ear infection.
Ear infection. Thank you. Forgive me. So he had an ear infection, which is, that's not something you can go, let's study his history of ear infections. Oh, he's likely to get one when he signs for us. That's just bad luck. But it just felt like there was all these sort of issues and problems when he arrived, that some of them, which he was all making, some weren't. Some of the clubs should have perhaps done a bit more due diligence. Then maybe you get the the shine taking off his transfer a little bit. I don't know if that affected him when Ronaldo arrives and it's all about Cristiano Ronaldo and people almost forget about Jadon Sancho because everyone was so obsessed, which you can understand, about the fact that Ronaldo had returned, and we were all here when it was announced, and we were almost in tears. It was like, oh my God. That might be a bit of a,
I think that's a great point, and one that I hadn't really considered, because that was such a game-changing event that happened that season. You've got Wally for Sancho for everybody at the club.
Yeah, because it's like you've got your big move, and it's like United's new player. They've chased you for 2 seasons. They've got you 70-odd million quid. You've just had this amazing season at Dortmund, where I think he got him helped get him into Champions League. I think he scored in the cup final as well. And then you get to United, and it's like, all eyes are on Ronaldo almost as soon as you get there, because it takes the shine off your transfer. So I don't know. I'll get in some of the comments, then we'll just come back to a couple of other bits on this as well. Let me just get this right. Matt G says we shouldn't get a CM. It shows Baleba he's our number one and not just a name on a list. Like Van Dijk with Liverpool. Mark's thoughts. I want to get both your thoughts on that, actually. Matt G is saying we shouldn't get a CM, we should wait for Baleba, I think, is what he's saying. Like, Liverpool did it with Van Dijk, didn't they, where they didn't get him in the summer and they got him in the January, I think. Yeah. So they were like, look, we'll wait because you're our number one target, and unfortunately that paid off for him. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with that sentiment, or do you think United should be looking for a midfielder in the meantime?
I wonder, and I don't want to sit on the fence, I wonder if there's a way of just getting somebody in a bit cheaper that can do that position well, but then that just isn't really the way that United have approached the market this summer, or business historically. So in that case, I'm inclined to agree. I think what United have done is potentially quite smart, I think, by registering that interest early, almost at a point where they knew that the market wasn't going to be open for Baleba this summer, but they also know that there's going to be fierce competition for him next summer. And just that sort of first mover advantage that you could get by getting in his head. We know that he wants it. I think that we have reported that, but then you only have to follow his Instagram to see. It seems that he's quite keen on it as well.
Apparently his match on the weekend, he played a bit like his head was elsewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
So maybe they'll decrease his value in it.
Got any sense? Doing the old, who was it? It was Johnny Lescott Everton, where he most down tools joined the game?
Yeah. Apparently
he had like the worst game he's ever had for him.
But the report
sitting in for him, and everyone was like, "Hang on a minute, he's never been this bad for us before."
Yeah. The report was he wants to join United, but he's not exactly unhappy at Brighton. Do you know what I mean? So it's one.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of players, still, when United come, the cachet, the stature of the club means that you want to join. You've also got to be mindful, if it's not going to happen, that you don't want to upset the apple cart and get booted into a bomb squad. So
doesn't help. He knows the likes of Lenny Yoro and Onana from Cameroon, and obviously you've got Brian and Boomer, and you know what players are like. They're definitely tapping him up as well.
He liked Mbeumo's Instagram post yesterday as well.
That's it. That's as good as signing a deal.
You know for a fact the likes of Mbeumo and Lenny Yoro messaging him like, oh, come to United. There's always the players will have that type of dialogue as well, but if there can't be an agreement between the two clubs, nothing can do. It's different from Brentford, because Brighton are actually they're tough negotiators, but they are willing sellers.
Yeah.
So you think they will come a point where they will sell him, but I don't know if they're banking on waiting another season where he still performs equally as well, maybe even better, and they can kind of play on a bidding war next year, because it was only kind of United in for him this year. And I think that's one of my biggest concerns. But with the midfield, like you said, I still think it's a major area of concern, and I've said that since
I don't think anyone has been as vocal as you.
Window.
You've been on
from the start.
Yeah,
from the start.
Honestly, even before we bought Cunha, he was like, "Look,
having it.
The attackers are all well and good, but we need to address the midfield." How concerned are you about it? Because I don't want to just sit here blowing smoke at your ass. A lot of what you've said is sort of worryingly coming to fruition in the sense that you question the midfield, you question whether Manuel Ugarte is the guy we all hope he is. And I know it's only one game in, I'm not getting carried away, because the performance overall was good. But it's obvious United do need to address the midfield situation somehow.
Yeah, because fans do that a lot, where it's like they'll always point to anomalies or one-off games and be like, well, it worked that game. Rather than paying attention to what the base level of the performance is over the course of a season or a game. because it's, for example, like Ugarte last season, if you judge his performance on an entirety, he wasn't like completely awful. He had some really good. Do you know what I mean? No, listen.
Didn't disgrace himself.
It wasn't completely awful.
It would be very disingenuous for me to sit here and say that Ugarte didn't have really good performances at some points last season, because he did. But he had some really bad lows as well. And for me, I think they're the players that worry me the most. You know, the ones that have occasional highs, but they're also able to have really, really, really bad lows. Yeah. I'd rather have players where you know that you're going to get like a decent level of performance consistently, and they can occasionally have great ones. I don't think it's ever a good sign when players fluctuate between being decent one week and then the other week they almost look like they're unplayable. Do you know what I mean?
There's an element of that with Mainoo. I don't think Mainoo has terrible games. I think he's had games where perhaps he might get caught out a little bit because he's not the quickest lad, or running over 80 yards, whatever, he might get beat for pace. But I don't think Mainoo has a game where you go, oh my God, get him off the pitch. And I think Mainoo has some games where you go, he's unreal.
But he's not getting played.
Yeah, I know. And that
like you 1-0 down and you send Ugarte.
I thought
everything was right yesterday, apart from that was a big question.
And everyone I spoke to after the game was just sort of coming out of Old Trafford, and a few people stopped me to give me their thoughts, which is was great. I'm always happy to hear them. That was the main topic.
Do you know what's mad?
A, we played well, and B, that if anyone was criticising any decisions, wasn't many people were criticising.
Yeah.
It was Ugarte was poor, and Mainoo should have got on the pitch before him.
Do you know what's mad though? Because everyone was looking at Ugarte's performance yesterday and being like, that's the worst performance he's had in the United shirt, and I'm looking at like, really?
Everton friendly 2 weeks ago.
Do you know what I mean?
Wasn't great.
I'd say the West Ham game last season was the one that cost him his place in the Europa League final.
I honestly think the fact that you actually it's one season you can look at a player and you have a choice of 5 or 6 performances as being one of the worst midfield performances you've seen at the club. That's not good. Do you know what I mean?
With Ugarte though, like I agree totally. I do think that this was the player they were always getting. Like they knew that he was a ball winner, but not a lot more than that. And he got binned out at PSG after one season. I remember when they announced it, and they were citing all these stats about tackles won and recoveries, and I was like, yeah, he's good at that, but what else? And now he's playing in a 2, where you can't just be so limited as to be good at this specific thing. Like I think we've seen it, right? It's not like he doesn't win tackles occasionally. It's not like he can't have that in his game. No. He's been the player everyone expected him to be. He's not the midfielder. Well, I don't want to write him off.
I'd go as far as to say, I'd go as far as to say, like, Ugarte in terms of his volume, do you know what I mean, when it comes to his tackles and how much he gets stuck in, his volume is good there, but I still think he is slightly overrated, if I'm being honest, in terms of the defensive side of his game. I do see him getting bypassed a lot. I think he can be really rash and reckless. Yeah, gets booked too often. You know what it is when I talked about him and how he's had these good games, but he's had these really awful ones. That happens when you a player like him who is overzealous and he's got such a boom or bust play style. The way he engages when it comes to tackles and plays, it does feel like he will have a game where everything will come off one game, but if he doesn't, he just looks silly. Do you know what I mean?
Because he's so aggressive, he's going into everything, so you win some, you lose some, and then if you tap up all the ones that you win, well, you've won a lot, but you've also lost a lot at the same time. He's that type of player, and he was always that type of player, and I just think, this idea that he was going to come in and fix all the problems was always a little bit, because he's just a bit too limited.
Ten Hag wasn't having him, was he?
No, not at all. It was definitely an Ineos signing rather than a Ten Hag one. I think Ten Hag wouldn't, there was talk one that we sold McTominay to bring in Ugarte, and I don't think Ten Hag would have.
The day that it happened, he was there saying, "I don't want to do this," but he's got to go because of. I think he said the financial fair play stuff. To be fair, the academy, but he's not going to go and say, "I don't want Ugarte" if they're getting Ugarte in, is he? So
he wanted to keep McTominay instead. Then he liked McTominay.
Yeah, of course he did. I think that was obvious. I think he would have kept Amrabat if it was up to him. Stretford Paddock have tweeted. This is on the back of Fabrizio Romano. Napoli have contacted Manchester United to explore the conditions of a loan deal for Rasmus Hojlund following the injury to Romelu Lukaku. There are no plans to let Joshua Zirkzee leave despite links today. So it looks like Napoli are interested in Rasmus Hojlund as well. So it does feel as though his destination somewhere is going to be Italy, somewhere in Italy. We'll keep you posted as always when we know a little bit more of that. I'm getting some super chats and I'll come back to you guys. Talking about Sancho, he shines at Dortmund and Chelsea, but he's a no-show at United, just like the Serie A Player of the Year. Something is wrong at Man U, Sir Jim weighs where to start. Discombobulate says, can't blame him after the money we were stupid enough to give him. Lad's a mercenary. Sorry to turn that off. Skeet says Man United, Man U fed up when they signed Ronaldo. That was Bruno's team, and he was making Pogba and Rashford into superstars, but the ego killed all of that. Jay says Ugarte situation needs to be a lesson. After one pre-season game, we deluded ourselves to think he'd be the key for the season and ignored his obvious deficiencies. We need to be less tolerant of mediocrity. Drew P... Oh, nice, I like what you've done there. Says, let's sell Delo. He's a plum. And some mug of a team would buy him. An absolute awful player. He's holding us back. We get some decent money as well. Awful. I don't agree with any of that. I mean, it's quite...
Delo catching strays.
I know. I mean, I don't actually think Delo did that badly yesterday. I mean, you can see the difference when Ahmad comes on. And if it's up to me, Ahmad would have started over him. But I wasn't watching it going, oh my God, Delo's having a stinker. I want to talk, just before we get into some other stuff, quickly about the goalkeeping situation, because I know you spoke about it yesterday when I've not had a chance to speak to you. I'll start with you. Obviously, Bayern, for me, it was a mistake, the Arsenal goal. I know the manager defended him. I think he was asked about it. He was asked whether Tom Heaton was going to start the next game, and he pushed back on that and said, Bayern, he mentions things like no VAR in the game against Spurs, and Bayern having a good game at the Emirates and saving a penalty and just basically defending his player, which I get.
Fuming, by the way, wasn't he?
That's as angry as I've seen Ruben Amorim.
His eyes.
Yeah, he was like, he looked... I mean, by anyone else's standards, that's mildly annoyed, but by his, that was like raging. I've never seen him so sort of fuming. Where do you stand on the goalkeeping situation? Do you think that it's just going to be Onana back in next week and we'll all just move on, or this week I should say, or do you think there's more to it than that?
I think United need a new keeper for sure. Bayern on the mistake, I think it was a combination of he was being hindered by Saliba, but I don't think it was enough of an excuse. I feel like it was very, very weak in terms of the way he defended that, because it was almost an equal one that we swung on top of Raya's head. Yeah, he got where Raya was getting blocked off almost the same way, but Raya was better, stronger, and punched it away. So I thought, and that's the issue, because I think outside of that from Bayern, I thought he was decent, and I think what's been kind of downplayed a little bit. I thought Bayern was really, really good on the ball. Yeah. In that game, I thought his distribution in that game yesterday was really good. Right
into Bruno in the field, and it needed a good touch from Bruno, but it absolutely took out Odegaard, and I can't remember who the other player was, but straight through the middle of them, and they were on the attack straight away.
Yes. But when you're a keeper, unfortunately, you can't make mistakes. Because it's the one position, once you make a mistake, it more than likely ends up in a goal or something. And I feel like that's what then mars your performance. So unfortunately, you can't have that. And I've always been a big advocate for keepers being people that you're almost like, you've got the utmost belief in, because I think if they're a little bit shaky and you're a bit iffy and you don't know when an error's coming, I think that can kind of sometimes permeates towards the back line and the midfield. I feel like teams and defenders feel much better when they walk out onto the pitch having utmost respect and belief in their goalkeeper, and I don't think there is that
in any of the three.
The trouble I've got with Bayern there is there's always seems to be some incident during the game. Yeah. Like against Villa, I thought he was lucky that goal got disallowed. Against Newcastle, he obviously kicks the ball out and it goes straight to their player and they score. Against Spurs, I think there was a direct corner, was it from Son, that goes straight in. Yeah. Like, there's always something, and that's what worries. I just think he needs a game not in a friendly, but a game in the first team for Manchester United, whether in the Premier League or whatever, where there isn't an incident, where there's just, it doesn't even need to be a clean sheet. He can concede a goal as long as it's not his fault. I think he needs that. It feels like there's always something.
Was there something over the Arsenal game as well, the FA Cup game, where I think he was brilliant that day, but the goal that...
Yeah, I think there was still
it wasn't, that was the first thing he'd done. Before there was this litany of saves. That
he had a very good game overall, but there was still an incident, wasn't there? And I just feel like every time he starts, I'm just willing him to just have just an incident-free game, because I think that'll help him. And then sort of, if he is getting an opportunity, he can move on. But it's just like there's always seems to be something. And against Arsenal, there was something. That goal, as soon as that went in, where I was sat and everyone around me, it was like, goalkeeper's got to be better. And when I watched it on the replay, I still felt like that. And I felt like, although you can talk about him being impeded or whatever, it almost felt like, it sounds like he'd gone to the player and got him.
Joe Hart was interesting on it on Match of the Day. I don't know if you saw it, but I know he's goalkeeper, so he might defend him, but he was pointing out that Mount, like when Arsenal take the corner, Mount has got hold of Saliba, so that's dealt off with, and Bayindir is like, if this comes in at the near post, I can go and punch it away and that. But then as soon as the corner kick comes in, suddenly Mount gets dominated by Saliba and he's on top of Bayindir, and then suddenly the whole Hart's point was that the whole game's changed then, and he was asking more from Mount to protect his goalkeeper rather than Bayindir. But maybe that's like a goalkeeper's perspective on it. I still think you look at it and say, you've got to be stronger than that.
And you get a hand to
pattern
it
as well.
You get a hand to it, and like you say,
he sort of did.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was like that. If you hadn't got near it, then you can go, okay, he's misread it, or there's a gap. But he got a hand to it, and the hand just did nothing.
Yeah.
And I think just do something. If it, worst case scenario, just punch it away, or just even if you knock it away, and it, then
never see goalkeepers head it away, do you?
Just do something. Yeah. Abinam Verma says,
you get more reach with your hand.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, that's a good.
To be fair, you know what?
To be fair, if he'd put his hand down and tried to head it, we'd all be sitting here saying he's insane. Get rid of him.
I've always been someone that thought keepers were like overly protected in a way.
Yeah.
So it's funny how it's come full circle, because I always think that the fact that keepers obviously have the ability to use their hands and use their arms, which is bigger reach. I feel like sometimes, for example, if a striker jumps up with a defender and kind of gets like a shoulder on him and just stronger in the air, no one ever says that's a foul, does it? But if you do that to a keeper, a foul gets given.
Do get.
I was a little surprised that he didn't go to VAR, honestly. Yeah. Especially given it's like the first week of the season, all the refs are like, you can't do this, you can't do that, and then they forget about it 2 weeks later. But it's the sort of thing that will get called up usually.
Abinab Verma says, feel Amorim anger on Bayindir was mostly because it was Samuel Luckhurst of the Toilet Paper News Agency. I think it was Sam Luckhurst who asked the question, and it did seem like Amorim had a bit of needle there. I don't know if it was the question or the journalist asking it, but he didn't seem happy. We've mentioned the ticket shambles. We'll get into a bit more of that later on in the week, but get in touch if you had issues getting in. And I've spoken to quite a lot of lads who did, not just lads, but a lot of people that did have issues getting into the ground last game. Hopefully they can get that sorted for the next home game, because it's a bit of a shambles. I want to talk about Wally of the Weeks. You guys know how this works. You name your Wally of the Week. It's someone who this week, or last week I should say, has been a Wally. And I'm not going to lie to you, I've got a phone book's worth of them today. I really have. I don't know where to start, but I'll let the guest, and you're not a guest, you're part of furniture, go first. So Mark, if you've got anyone, I know you probably have to be a bit more professional than me and Ronnie.
Wallies of the week?
Yeah.
Can I pick myself for not picking Gianni Reinders in FPL?
You can, yeah, and I can.
He was on my bench.
That's a bigger Wally, to be fair. No, you've got to take that off me. Shit.
I'll say I'm a Wally for my fantasy football team as well, because it was terrible. I don't even know what I was thinking.
I've still got one player left.
I thought it was clever.
I've got Ndiaye tonight.
Right, well, there you go. He'll do all right. Who's your Wally of the week?
The referee, Arne Slot in the United.
Oh,
I don't know his name. Just looked like Arne Slot to me.
The bald fella.
Oh, Simon Hooper.
Simon Hooper, yeah.
This is why we have professionals on here. Simon Hooper. Should have been a penalty on Cunha.
Should have been a penalty on Cunha.
Yeah, I agree.
I have no idea how that wasn't a penalty. And there's always, especially Dermot Gallagher on Ref Watch, there's always some mental gymnastics to protect the referee.
You've nicked one of my Wally of the weeks.
Mike Dean's
Gallagher. I was coming for him, but go on.
Mike Dean's also on commentary, and he always backs up what the referee's given as well. So I always think there's no point having referees on commentary or on the Ref Watch for him to just end up backing their boys anyway, because there's no replay or there's no sequence that suggests that was anything other than a foul. Do you know what? I don't think there's been enough uproar about it. I think us United, we've been disappointed with the fact that we didn't get a result which our performance deserved. But I feel like we should be even angry about the fact that wasn't given.
What does the uproar do though? You don't want to be like Arsenal fans.
We could be like Arsenal fans, innit, and write letters and all sorts.
If I ever sit down and write a letter about a decision, then just do me a favour and put me out of my misery.
Imagine our owner was like Marinakis.
No. Dermot Gallagher.
Thoughts about him? He's scary, man.
Wally, yeah, I agree.
I've seen him on TV programmes before. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I go with Dermot Gallagher, Wally of the week. That Ref Watch, just get rid of it, Sky. It's a little pointless shite. Also, your man at the Liverpool game giving Semenyo a load of grief.
That's a joke.
Absolute knobhead. I think he's been banned for life, and good. That's what he should get. I had a few more, but I've forgotten them all in the sort of the anger of that decision. You just triggered me there, because again, it goes under the radar a little bit and people just focus on everything else. But that to me was a Stonewall penalty. It really was. And the more I saw it, the more angry I got. Anyway, Go and check out Mark Critchley's work in the Athletic. And I give you sticks sometimes, right? Say, you know what, have you written anything lately and all the rest of it? But you've been busy, haven't you? You've listened to my advice and you've upped your game. And
you were in my performance review, weren't you?
But you've written a lot of great articles about Manchester United and other clubs as well. So go and check out. There should be a link in the description to the Athletic. Go and check out Mark Critchley's work there. And he's always on the channel. And one day we'll see you back on the Overlap as well, because I think I'll give you the kiss of death when I introduce you as the Overlap presenter. And
I'm like
me and you said the same thing. I think we've both been on once, and that was it.
I'm like, Poochie off The Simpsons. Like, Mark Critchley died on the way back to his home planet. That's me in the Overlap.
Yeah.
See you later.
Share your pain, bro. I do. Go check out the link in the description. Cheers, Mark. You know where to find Ronaldo Brown as well. You'll be back at some point coming up, aren't you? You've been on watch-alongs and all that sort of stuff. We get you on everything, don't we? So you know where to find him. That's been Mark Critchley. That's been Ronaldo Brown. I've been Jay Marty. This has been the Paddock Podcast. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.